Your astrology chart's power source is the engine at the center of the works of your life. This is a technique that uses traditional astrology's idea of the final dispositor, but it takes it much further and makes it easier for someone who knows very little about astrology to get how it applies to their life. To understand the idea of the power source, first you need to get the idea of rulerships in astrology. Every sign has a planet that rules it, and they are two forms of the same basic archetypal idea. On this diagram, you see planets associated with the signs that they rule. The signs, like Virgo, Leo, Cancer, are food or fuel created by their ruling planets. Saturn, for example, creates Capricorn food. Venus creates Libra food. Each planet creates its own special kind of food. Now add another idea. You must feed a planet according to the sign it's in. Not the sign it rules, but the sign it's in. Any planet that's in Capricorn benefits from Capricorn food, which is structure, discipline, and goals. Feed that planet Capricorn food and it will thrive. Any planet that's in Libra needs Libra food, a steady diet of fairness, balance, harmony, and symmetry. Feed this planet Libra food because it's in Libra, and therefore it will thrive. All the planets make some specific kind of food, and in a birth chart, they will all need to eat some specific kind of food too, and those are not usually the same kinds of food. When a planet is in its own sign, we say that planet is at home, and it essentially makes its own food. But most of the planets in your chart, like anyone's, are not at home, but in some other sign, so most planets are looking to another planet for their fuel. Now I'd like you to imagine that a chart is like a banquet hall, where all the planetary characters have tables, and each planet is dishing up its own signature brand food. Saturn is serving up Capricorn food, Venus is serving up Libra food, Mars is serving up Aries food, and so on. Then each planetary character leaves its own table and goes to the table with the food of the sign it occupies and says, "Feed me." This is all just a fun metaphor until I apply it to a chart, so here's an example. This chart features Venus in Capricorn right here, which is ruled by Saturn, which is over here. And Saturn is in Libra, which is ruled by Venus. This is a special situation called a mutual reception. And here I've marked it. Venus ruling Libra where Saturn is, Saturn ruling Capricorn where Venus is. So this means that Venus feeds Saturn while Saturn feeds Venus. They mutually feed each other. That's why it's called a mutual reception. This chart is or represents a person whose relationships and relatability, that would be Venus, feeds their career and authority, that would be Saturn, and vice versa. Business relationships are important to this person, and they care about their social reputation too. If you look closely, you can see that Saturn rules one other thing right here in Capricorn, but that Venus rules several others right over here. One of them is Pluto here, this little guy in Libra, which rules Scorpio, which is where Jupiter is right here. And then Jupiter, which rules Sagittarius, rules a pile of things right over here. And then if we follow this to its conclusion, we see that from Venus to Pluto to Jupiter to the Sagittarius pile and out into the rest of the chart, absolutely everything through that Sagittarius pile, all ruled by Jupiter, ultimately goes back to the Venus-Saturn mutual reception. So everything in this chart basically is fed, directly or indirectly, by Venus and Saturn and their relationship with each other. I know it's a lot of scribbles. I hope that didn't make your head explode. Basically, this dynamic is packed with information about the person behind the chart, and I could go on about it for hours, but we only have a few minutes here, so I'm keeping it compact. Have you ever seen a pyramid of wine glasses stacked up and someone pours wine into the top glass, making a waterfall that fills all the other glasses in a massive cascade? That's how I see this power source working. And here's a picture of it. See? Here you see the very same planets from that chart rearranged into a cascade structure. The planets at the top feed the ones below, and each planet, once fed, becomes energized to fulfill its mission, and it goes on to feed what's below it until everything is fed and energized. The works of your life are working, all because the engine at the center of the works of your life was fueled. And that's the thing, or things at the top, the power source. Now here's a bit of a monkey wrench. Not all planets really like the food they must eat. Some parts of your power source downline may need to be groomed, especially where there are bottlenecks like this Jupiter here. Keeping this Jupiter in good shape is really important because it feeds so much. I'm going to read just one downline now so you can get an idea how this works. Here's Mars. It is below Mercury, which is below Jupiter, which is below Pluto, which goes up to Venus. And we know that Venus and Saturn have this thing together. So let's say the person whose chart this is wants to get in touch with their decisiveness. That's their Mars, which is in Virgo. So they tend to criticize themselves instead of knowing what they want and taking clear action. Mars doesn't like being in Virgo. Mars must look to Mercury for that Virgo food so Mars can fuel up and produce clear action. Mercury makes Virgo food, but must look to Jupiter for its own fuel because Mercury is in Sagittarius. And Jupiter must look to Pluto, which looks to Venus, which has that thing with Saturn. So here's one way to interpret this downline. Love is the fuel for transformation. Transformation is the fuel for ethics. Ethics is the fuel for clear thinking. And clear thinking is the fuel for right action. Following another downline, ethics is also the fuel for genius. Genius is the fuel for emotional security, and emotional security is the fuel for being in touch with your destiny. This is the kind of wisdom you can really live by. We could spend years with this individual unpacking that interpretation alone. Now, I want to let you know that not every chart has a power source that's a mutual reception like this one here between Saturn and Venus. There are many different kinds of power source situations. Sometimes, rarely, everything in a chart is sourced in just one planet. Sometimes it's all sourced in a chain of several planets that feed each other in a circle. Sometimes there are several power sources not connected to each other. You might want to look into this in your own chart. What does your chart's power source look like? How can you use it to unlock and fuel absolutely every area of your life? What parts of you are struggling to get the fuel they need to perform their good missions for you? Visit pandoraastrology.com to find an astrologer who can talk with you about it or take a class where you can learn to interpret it.